Hey guys, this is Spark Plus Ultra here, and this is my part 2 on what if Deku was reincarnation of Sif, the Great Wolf. And I hope you like this video and hope you subscribe. Zuko was taking the sword with him, with Jiro accompanying him. And Jiro looks at the sword and asks why Zuko is holding the sword. And Zuko tells Jiro that the sword was a past that brought pain. And Jiro says, why did you not tell me it brought you pain? And Zuko sighs and gives out a little tear to his eye and says, because this sword giving a snuffle his inner cry and says, this sword is one of the things that my old master has ever showed, and I vowed to keep this safe from anybody, even until death, even until I was reincarnated. Some reason my soul reincarnated to this world, and somehow the sword was about 4,900 years old, to the point that I'm not even supposed to let family members close to it. And Jiro says, so that's why you howled. I thought that was I never seen you get so emotional. Zuko says, let's keep this hidden from anybody, or keep it away from people. And Jiro says, and I'll keep it away from your past. And Zuko says, this is my vow. This is my saying. I will protect anybody. Zuko and Jiro have been close as to the point that they are considering like brother and sister, even at a young age. Zuko thinks in a soft tone and says, why did that guy bring that sword back? Why? The sword was hell. Then he sees a graving on the sword, and Zuko says, the guy? And when he read what he sees on the sword, he cries out and says, that dumbass, why did he bring that to bury that where I was marked? He was shouting at a sad but very obviously angered tone. And Zuko says, I was happy. Why? Crying his eyes. Jiro comes in and says, Zuko, what's the matter? And hugging him and says, there's a written note on the sword. And Jiro says, really? does it say? And when she gets close to the sword, not to touch it, she says, "What the? I can't read it." And Zuko says, "My eyes hold the true wielder. It's not shown by the few people who haven't touched it." And Jiro says, "What does it say?" And Zuko says, "Take a deep breath," then tells her, "Dear the Guardian of Sift, I did not want to fight you. I had no choice, and you had no choice. If I hadn't grabbed the sword, if we hadn't fought and given a choice, then sometime we would have been allies. Now I thank you for the sword, and I'll leave it in a secret place that you can only find. I bear this present to you from the soul of the one that beat you." Zuki says he put it on the ground and buried it, giving the sword back to me. And Jiro closes her eyes and says, "The most loyal person," and hugs Zuko and says, "I will always care for you. You may be the one that helps us, but you're the one who needs help the most." And Zuko says, "Thank you, Cheryl." And Zuko lays down and sleeps with the sword. Hiro goes to bed as well. While sleeping, the sword glows in a bright blue, like a shimmering night, a bond of glistening water. The sword glows. The man that was within the sword's right, his soul was in it. He says, "I am sorted, Sif, the great white wolf," and disappears. Zuko trains with the sword, and Jiro trains with Zuko as well. Zuko tries not to use any lethal styles, like using the sharp edge of the sword. He rather keeps from not kill blows, thanks to his adapting style. He has grown to the point that he is nearly mastering the sword that bears on him. Then Zuko and Jiro go to UA, and Zuko carries the sword on his back and was saying, "Man, this feels like the past to me again." And Jiro says, "Huh? How so?" And Zuko says, "Because this sword I hold is the one that I hold the most with my former master. This reminds me of the past when I lost him to it. This is the time when I held it by myself, facing everybody. But the world changed, thanks to you." And Jiro getting a smile, and Zuko smiles with a happiest smirk that he ever gave her. She blushes a bit and says, "Okay, jeez, I don't need to pour your full feelings about that." And Zuko says, "Yeah, but it's the one reason why I thank you, Jiro." And Jiro takes that to heart and says, "Okay, the drama is over. Now we can fight heroes and villains." And Zuko says, "Don't think I would like to hurt them." Okay. And Jiro says, "Relax. They're going to be using something to make sure that those stations." And Zuko and Jiro walk to the UA. Zuko takes about a 69 on his score. And Jiro, I'm betting on her usual one on the test. Jiro says, "So, what did you get on your score?" And Zuko says, 69. Wow, I didn't expect you to get it. You weren't always great with math. I'm lucky that it was all English and Japanese history. That I can remember." While walking towards the hall, he hears, "You, young man, it's a violation to bring a weapon." And Zuko says, "Sorry, I forgot." And the young man says, "You must put that weapon away. It's violations." Zuko says, "Yeah." And the boy says, "I'll put it somewhere." Gonna grab the sword. Zuko says, "No!" and grabs his sword and unsheaths it and says, "You're not going to touch the sword." And Ida says, "What? You're threatening me? That's violation." And Zuko says, "You're not gonna touch it." And Jiro says, holding Zuko back and says, "Sorry." He's very protective of the sword he has. It's a long family history. The boy says, "Oh, I'm sorry, but rules are rules. You need to put that weapon away." And Jiro says, "Yeah, right, Zuko?" looking at him. And Zuko says, "Oh, I'm sorry. Forgot my manners. I don't want you to touch it." Looking at and says, "Okay, just put it somewhere safe." And Zuko says, "Yes," bowing down to him. Jiro says, "Jeez, that was a close one. What were you thinking on acting like that?" Talking to him in a serious voice. And Zuko says, "Sorry, I'm just very protective of the persons that even come near this sport." Jiro says, "Fine, just put it somewhere safe, okay? And Zuku says, yes. Jiro says, he may be very thoughtful and kind, but he forgets to act on the situation. And Zuko puts it somewhere that no other people will touch it, and goes back to Jiro and enters the room where she is. And Jiro says, so, did you put it somewhere? And Zuko says, yes. And Jiro says, okay, then you need to be quiet. Zuko says, Listening to President Mike's, he listens to the robots that they're taking down. Zuko and Jiro have been separated. Zuko waits patiently, waits until it starts. Ida looks at the same kid who pulls a sword on him and says, you there, I wasn't expecting you to be so quiet. He's laying down. Zuko says, and looks at Ida and says, I'm sorry. And Ida says, huh? What are you talking about? And Zuko says, I'm sorry that I told that to you. And Ida says, it's no problem. Just try to think on your actions. And Zuko says, I did. I just didn't want you to touch it. And Ida says, what do you mean? And Zuko says, aren't you listening to the President Mike? Ida says, huh? Ida looks up and sees President Mike on the air balloon and says, how did you? And Zuko says, it's rude to not listen to him. Better get on. And Ida says, yes, thank you. And President Mike tells the students to take down the villains and says, ready, set, go! Villains don't need time to wait. And Zuko bursts into speed, taking enough burst of speed to near rival Ida's on 4 legs, taking down villains with his wolf form at a flash and a speed state. The students are amazed on how he's regulating his body to keep pace with all the madness. And Zuko saved about 27 people who were nearly get collapsed by rubble. That makes it to 57 and 67 on taking down villains and saving people. Zuko sits down and relaxes, taking a little break and saying, I think that's enough on points. Then he feels the ground rumbling and hears a huge mechanical sound. Zuko looks at and sees the 0 pointer. All the students were running away. Zuko was going to, but then hears a voice. A girl was stuck on a pillar. Zuko rushed into like a bolt of lightning at a fast pace, lifts the pillar off her and grabs her with his mouth, holding her, getting away in time that the 0-pointer missed the stomp, and says, "Are you okay, my lady?" Ochako says, yeah. And then she says, my lady? Questioning on what he said. And Zuko then realized, saying, I am sorry. I gotta go. And running and hiding on what he said. Ochako was little embarrassed, but also confused, and says, he's a weird one, but kind. And Zuko and the test has ended, and Zuko and Jiro walk together going back home. And Jiro says, man, that was tough. Didn't expect so many robots to be there. And Zuko says, well, I always expect the unexpected. The Jiro says, so how many robots would you take down? And Zuko says, about 67. And Jiro says, what? And I lucked out. And Zuko says, don't worry, there's always next time. Jiro and Zuko see a box on their porch. And Zuko and Jiro take it to their room and sees All Might hologram popping out, and that they have qualified for UA and are in class 1A. Jiro says, yeah! And Zuko smiles and says, not surprising. Jiro says, and looks at the sword and says, your sword is glowing. Zuko looks at the sword and gives a frown and says, pay no attention to that. And Jiro and Zuko go to sleep. And I hope you like this video and hope you subscribe. See you next time. Bless Ultra.